Hello and welcome back. As you see, I've entitled this talk, God Does Not Punish Sin or Sinners. I can already hear there could be some protest saying, well, even Jesus spoke about suffering after death. And that's true, and I'll address that towards the end of this video. But for now, I want to explain why I say God does not punish sin or sinners, and why there's this misconception about what it really means when we talk about sin. So, to begin with, God said through Jesus, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. And he also said, my will is that my joy be in you and your joy be complete. And this is truly God's will for us. Because as I said in the introduction, God is love. You see, if you have to say what a person is who has power, makes all the rules, and then says, if you don't follow those rules exactly as I've laid them down, I'll make you suffer terribly. You're talking about, if that person is very young, a bully. If you're talking about a person with bigger powers, a bit older, they would be a tyrant or a dictator. And so that is violence against people, that sort of behavior, and obviously would be the contrary of love. So, talking about that God loves us, we maybe need to look again at the commandments, and that's a word that is almost a bad word these days, and it's possible that some people may even have clicked away from this video because of the very mention of the commandments. But if we stop for a minute to consider, excluding the first three, which I'll deal with in another video, the commandments that deal with our relationship with other people, we have to ask ourselves, what is wrong with saying that we should have respect for our parents, that we must not kill, that we must not steal, that we must not say things that are not true about other people, and so on. And we can see that they're perfectly reasonable rules for good living, for having a life that is beautiful and relationships that are good with other people. Our problem is that we misunderstand the reason that the commandments are there. You see, God put those commandments there for our good. It's like a parent having to say to a child that there are certain things they must not do in life, otherwise they're going to suffer. If a parent says to a child on a dangerous road, don't play in the street, it's dangerous, and the child doesn't listen to them and then suffers what the parent foresaw, you cannot say that the parent is punishing them. The suffering they experience is the natural result of doing what they did. If a parent says to a child, don't dabble with drugs because most often that ends up in a very bad place, and the child doesn't listen to them, when they end up with great difficulties as a result in their life, that's not the parent punishing them. That's the natural result of what this road they've taken, despite the contrary indications of their parents. And so it is with God. When He lays down His commandments with us, He's putting those commandments there to help us to avoid the difficulties of life, that we may have life, that we must have it to the full, and that His joy may be in us and our joy be complete. The fact is that He loves you as you are, where you are right now, because you are His child. And loving you, He lays down these commandments in order to make your life as beautiful as He can. And so we see that the commandments are not put there as something to beat us over the head with. They're merely put there to show us the best way of living. If I were to decide to treat everyone I met in my life badly, and then experience the difficulties that would result, I could hardly blame God and say, well, He's punishing me. We know that if I treat everyone badly, I'm not going to have a very pleasant life. And this is true of all these things in our lives. And so, as I said, what about the suffering that Jesus even talks about after death? Well, the fact is, when we die, we have what's called a life review, when we experience again the various things that happened in our lives, positive and negative, but we experience them at a different level. We experience, for the negative things, the pain we caused the other person, the discomfort, the hardship. And that can be very hard to face, especially if we've lived a life where we haven't cared about how we treated other people, whether we made their lives more difficult or easier, and so on. That does make it more difficult to face this life review. And the suffering will come when people are not prepared to face this life review, when they're not prepared to look at what they did in their life and accept that because of their actions, suffering did come into the world, terrible suffering sometimes, and that they were responsible for that, and that they need to change their way of seeing other people and other things in order to no longer want to live that way. And until they're prepared to do that, they cannot move forward. And so suffering is this great frustration at knowing within themselves that unless they face up to this review, and unless they're prepared to learn the lessons they have to learn from it, they will stay stuck where they are. This again is not punishment inflicted by God, it's suffering inflicted on themselves by the person because of their unwillingness to move forward. And so I hope that in beginning to see that God is not looking out to punish you, God is not wanting, He's not angry with you, He's not wanting you to suffer, He loves you, can help you as you develop your relationship with Him, of not having to feel guilty before Him. When we warn a child of something and they don't listen to us and then suffer, we suffer with them. When they do heed our warning and there's a good outcome, we rejoice with them. And in exactly the same way, when you don't follow God's way and you have suffering in your life, God suffers with you. And when you do and you have joy in your life, God rejoices with you because He loves you. And may God bless you.